Welcome to the IREL podcast. Are you sick and tired of real estate gurus pitching their next pre-construction deal, only to find out years later they were completely wrong? Worried the next overseas conference you spend thousands to attend will only be used to sell overpriced lots and deserted developments? Join thousands of other international real estate seekers who are looking for their place in paradise without the sales pitch. Straight from your host, Taylor White.
Hey, podcast listener. Welcome to the Overseas Property Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Taylor White. I am proud to say this episode is brought to your earbuds courtesy of today's guest, Travefy. A free and easy group travel planner, Travefy is a free web app that makes it simple and fun to plan trips with friends and groups. With Travefy, you can keep everyone on the same page, find amazing places to stay, and never get stuck with the bill. It's easy trip planning with less hassle. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/Travefy for more details. Today we hear from CEO and co-founder of Travefy, David Chait, which has been featured in the New York Times, Entrepreneur, Inc., Fast Company, and is a free web app that makes it simple and fun to plan trips with friends and groups. With an incredible amount of data available at David's hands, we will specifically deep dive into the economic benefits of listing one's home as a vacation rental in general, and then David will provide specific vacation rental trends that Travefy is seeing on a macro level, especially in Europe. Instead of telling you more, let's join David from the Travefy headquarters. David, what's going on? It's Taylor White. I'm excited to have you on the podcast straight from the Travefy headquarters so we can get to know you personally. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me here. I'm thrilled to be able to chat more about Travefy and also some of the great things we've seen with vacation rentals. My background as far as me, the number one thing, which I think is why I'm doing what it is that I am, is I love to travel. My entire life, all money made, all goals, everything has been towards that goal of traveling and seeing the world. I actually started my career after college as a consultant. I was working at a great firm, McKinsey, and actually had the opportunity through that to really see the country, travel the globe, and really got the bug even more so for travel itself. After that, I had a great opportunity then to work at the Small Business Administration, helping small companies grow and build. And that's really where I got my passion for entrepreneurship and saying, wow, you really can create and solve problems. Then like anyone else, I think, the best ideas come from necessity. It's always the mother of all invention. And I was planning a really good friend's bachelor party. We had a lot of issues coordinating and figuring out when and where we're going to go. And I said, wow, there has to be a better way to actually plan group trips. And that's how I became the entrepreneur that I am today, building a group travel planner to help you and everyone really solve all those coordination headaches.
David, I love it. I know that you're CEO and co-founder of Travefy. You guys have been featured everywhere, including the New York Times, Entrepreneur, Inc., Fast Company. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Travefy is a free web app that makes it simple and fun to plan trips with friends and groups. Can you talk more about your guys' app?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was, really great description. We are the easiest online and mobile group travel planner. And what that really means is that we give you as users the tools to collaborate on trip details, book travel deals, and collect shared expenses. And so what that means is you can come onto Travefy on your computer, tablet, or mobile phone. We're optimized for anything. Invite your friends to a trip where we'll integrate with any of your social networks or add their emails. You can at the front end do simple things like manage RSVPs, create polls to find when and where you want to go. But then you can get into the really fun stuff. Like you can search over 8 million activities, restaurants, accommodations, flights, and deals across the globe to actually post, discuss, and book your perfect travel itinerary. Second, while you're actually building this rich shareable itinerary, we give you the tools through our patent pending expense manager to actually track all of those sources and uses of expenses and collect them simply with one click of a button on Travefy, as opposed to owing multiple people money or collecting from others, so you never get stuck with the bill again. As you mentioned, we are a free web app. Travefy is perfectly free to get started, planning, etc. You only pay for what you use. So if you book that vacation rental or book that flight, obviously you pay for it. We also have a companion mobile app that's currently in the iOS and Android store that relates to our expense tool for those heavy users, where you can actually do things like photo capture receipts and more.
So, David, I'm curious. You said it's a free web app, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Just curious, from your company's standpoint, how do you guys get paid?
Well, so we get paid in a couple different ways. And this is really where it's key on why it's free to you. So firstly, if you were to book anything, let's say you were to book that hotel or vacation rental or flight, we actually get paid a commission from that company you booked it for. So let's take hotels, for instance. We offer a meta search where you can find hotels from a lot of the great companies that you're familiar with, the Expedias, the Booking.coms of the world. They pay us a commission if you book. The second is that expense management tool that I described earlier that we've built proprietary in-house. If you were to settle expenses through there, it is always free to collect. However, if you owe your friends money, you'll pay a cash management fee on top of that, as you would any other time you were to pay for any sort of service online using a credit or debit card.
So, David, this is a podcast that focuses on the overseas real estate niche, and I would really love to deep dive into the economic benefits of listing one's home as a vacation rental in general.
Well, and that's a really important question, and the really short answer to that is it's huge. If you were to look at the data out there, one of the best sources we've seen out there is the 2014 Vacation Rental Report. You see trends like the average vacation rental who operates this for income is making $30,000 per year. Those that, again, focus this in terms of maximizing the amount of time they rent out, according to HomeAway, these owners are actually paying at least 3/4 of their mortgage payments by renting out their home. And that's 50% of those that are actually putting it out there on the market. So the benefits, if you are willing to put yourself in the situation to list your home as a vacation rental, aside from the actual intangibles like meeting great people potentially, is enormous.
So, David, we had on David Gray, who's Senior Vice President at HomeAway, and he believes there's a huge potential in the European vacation rental markets specifically. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, well, I think he's 100% on, and you can look at that in a couple different ways. If you look at the top line numbers, which is one of the great ways to see, you've seen a lot of growth. So if we're talking now about Europe, if we're talking euros, you've seen that rise from about 19 billion euros per year market in 2010 to reaching almost 22 in 2013. So you've seen a lot of percentage growth. But the bigger thing that really, to me, says that Europe is ready to pop even more so are two things. Number one, you already have a learned behavior there. Versus the US, more people in Europe have actually booked at vacation rentals, more than 1 in 4 Europeans, according to a 2011 study. So they're very comfortable with this. So there's not a learned behavior. The market's just ready to penetrate more. And the second, for me, which is really the number one thing why if I were HomeAway or one of these other great companies, I would be really chomping at the bit for Europe, is that if you were to look at the data, families and groups take about 40% of what are long vacation stays, which are really the bread and butter for vacation rentals, but only 20% are actually booking through vacation rental companies, which means that you actually have about a 2x multiplier if you just educate them on the system and provide more opportunities, aside from the top line growth that you're already seeing.
So, David, I'm curious. We just focused on Europe. Now, why do you guys see huge potential in Europe versus a spot like Latin America?
I think that overall, we're agnostic to all of these areas, and we think that all have their own potential for growth, and we see travelers going everywhere. I think Europe really comes down to, I think some of the points that I made earlier, is as you're innovating with technology, you always have different hurdles and steps to come over, learn behaviors in terms of online booking or learn behaviors in terms of this type of accommodation. And the beauty about vacation rentals are what we consider the alternate accommodations, hostels on one end of the spectrum and vacation rentals on the other, are much more an already learned behavior in both Europeans, but also travelers to Europe. Where for us, it's really, bringing them to the water of we provide the great tools and services to share this with you, but people are looking for it. So it represents a much larger opportunity where in some of these other markets, like the US, which is fantastic and growing, Latin America and others, we much more have to teach the behavior, teach how they work, teach the systems, things of that sort.
Exactly. So, David, we spoke a little bit about HomeAway. Can you speak more about some of the leading vacation rental platforms?
Well, I think one of the interesting things, if you want to take a step back on Europe versus some of the other places, is it's actually much more fragmented. So HomeAway is the largest vacation rental company in the world, as we all know. You see much more in Europe a long tail, which both represents opportunities for both the HomeAways and these companies to grow market share. But you aren't seeing as much of a head-to-head whereas you would in, let's say, a US where you've had, though internationally, growth, but you're really seeing companies like the Airbnbs and others really take hold. I think the biggest distinction, if we want to talk less on a company basis and more on a type of company basis, are the distinctions between those companies like the VRBOs that require you to pay to list versus those companies like the Airbnbs where it is free to list. And I think that, you see a distinction there, which is neither is good nor bad, but you see a probably the trade-off is around both quantity. In a lot of the free lists, you're actually seeing the numbers of stock that's available to rent growing much quicker versus quality checks and controls that you have in any type of pay-for system, where people are thinking of this much more in terms of the economic long-term benefits and are investing in making sure they have the right systems, housing, et cetera, for the longer stay vacation rentals.
So David, talk to me a little bit more about how your app can integrate with sites like HomeAway or VRBO or Airbnb.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, within Travefy, we offer meta search abilities to find over 8 million activities, restaurants, accommodations. And within that, we also offer vacation rentals, where today we're partnered with HomeAway and offer their stock VRBO and others, where anyone, if you're within a trip and let's say you're looking to go to Lyon in France, you can simply search for vacation rentals. And when you go under your ideas tab to accommodations, assuming that you already chose that as your location, it'll already be pre-populated. And you'll find thousands, if not more, of great vacation rentals, all there with rich information like photos, descriptions, ratings, pricing, maps, and more. And also the ability to filter by the important things that we see people do, like number of bedrooms, amenities, locations, price, et cetera. And so we actually bring all of this together. And one of the biggest things of Travefy's value isn't even necessarily just the stock that we provide, which is unmatched in how we've brought it all together, as I mentioned, with over 8 million, but also that it's all in one place where you can search, discuss, collect money for it, and build that rich itinerary. And it's because of these great partners like HomeAway that we work with that see this as a wonderful opportunity to increase their visibility by letting us share their wonderful stock with our great user base.
David, I love it. No doubt you're at the top and you see a lot of great market trends happening. What are some of the bigger market trends that you're seeing through 2014 and beyond?
Online is surging. So one of the big things that you see if you look at sort of this industry is that the first move that was made, as you would expect with the advent of great online and e-commerce, was moving the listings online. What you're now seeing is actually moving the checkout processes online, which is really, really a big, important thing. If you look at 2007, about 12% of the actual transactions of these sales were happening online. In 2012, which is the most recent data available, it was about a quarter. And so you're seeing that push up, and you're seeing that with some of the great companies that I've talked about that are either through sort of force, like at Airbnb, actually all transactions happen online, or through HomeAway that has invested a lot of great resources into moving the ability for inquiries and booking and checkout to happen online. You're seeing that grow. And I think that full automation and process is going to be one of the larger things that you'll see, both in terms of that growing, but I think that will also help grow the top line of people using vacation rentals, because now the learned behavior, again, is we book things online. If you're thinking about the US, 65% of all accommodation and booking travel transactions happen online. People want that, they look for it, and we're going to see that really penetrate the vacation rental market even more as well.
So, David, I would love to hear from you. Why do you think travelers like to stay in vacation rentals versus traditional hotels?
Yeah, I mean, we see that for really two reasons. Number one are the general economics of staying there. If you were to look at number one lists on what are the top reasons that people choose a vacation rental, one of the great resources out there is Discover Vacation Homes, and the number one is value for price. So number one, there's this perceived value that when you're staying at a vacation rental, you're getting more bang for your buck in terms of rooms, spaciousness, et cetera. Airbnb recently put out a study that said it's about 65% of comparable to hotel rooms for a 2-bedroom. So I think people look a lot to that, A. B, I think there's also the economic benefits that folks see even beyond just what's the cost of a room, which are things like if you have a kitchen, you can cook and save money depending on where you're traveling to, but especially Europe, which is a wonderful place, but food prices can be expensive. You can actually offset a lot of that cost by having that. So I think that the economic and benefits is really number one. Number two, which we see in certain pockets. So within Travefy, we have lots of great travelers using the tool for everything from family reunions to bachelor parties to sports teams. And when you're really seeing a lot of these bachelorette weekends or couples retreats type of things, you much more see an upswing in vacation rentals because there's the togetherness factor as opposed to your own siloed hotel room. I think that there's a communal aspect that we see a lot of users and folks really enjoy as well.
So, David, I know that Travefy has a group travel planner. Can you speak more about the group travel platform with Travefy?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the way it works is we give you the tools to be your one-stop shop to plan, book, and really execute your perfect trip. So let's say I'm a user. I would go to Travefy.com on any device. If I knew that I wanted to travel with, let's say, these 15 friends, which is such a hassle to coordinate, I would invite them via integrating my Facebook account where I could link some of them or my Gmail contacts. We'd invite them to this collaborative private planning space where we could, number one, vote to find the best date and location where we want to go. And then we can search over those 8 million activities, restaurants, accommodations, and flights to find exactly what we want to do. We can post and discuss restaurants with ratings and menus and photos to find where do we want to go to dinner and then add it to our mobile itinerary that we all take with us. Similarly with finding that perfect vacation rental where there's so many great ones out there and we can discuss and actually find that great one. And then one of the great things is once we have that great itinerary and know what we're doing, we can, number one, book it. But number two, for things like big ticket items, like let's say a vacation rental, which are great, but you're paying a lot of money up front, rather than, let's say, in normal circumstances where I might get stuck with a $2,500 bill, I can, through Travefy, bill out to all of my friends right there, simple and easy, to collect that up front to pay. So no one gets stuck with the bill.
So then, David, talk to us a little bit more about Travefy's vacation rental data trends. You know, things like what do travelers look for in vacation rentals? Is it price? Is it amenities? Do they want 2 bedrooms? Do they want 3 bedrooms? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'd say the number one thing, I break this into 2 categories. Category 1 would be what are the types of things people like? And then number 2, what are the things when you're putting in a listing that can really help you differentiate? So what are the things that really help and what are the things that are non-starters?
Right.
First, in terms of what are those great trends that we see, really, I'd say the number one has to do with size. We really don't see anything that's less than 3 bedrooms come through. More often, people end up looking for things like hotels at that point. So we really see this sweet spot, though it can get very high in sort of the 3 to 8 bedroom range. So you're talking about larger groups that are looking for things of that sort. The other thing that we look for is price. Not so much that there's a sensitivity to paying more, but you really see that much more allocate with the value of number of bedrooms. There's a linear function to that. The third one, which is really we see a large jump up in, relate to amenities. We see a lot of people going to warmer weather areas. Things like pools are important, backyards, the ability to grill. And then really one of the great amenities that you really find that people are looking for are larger kitchens, which again speaks to the offset that people find with cooking. Now, all of this really boils down to how are they differentiating? The number one thing that can really kill a vacation rental is not having high quality photos. We look at all the differences between some great listings with high res, good quality photos, number of rooms covered, etc. They perform enormously well. We see other listings of places where they're low resolution. They're more about the building than necessarily the actual complex or unit or whatever it might be. And those really fall flat. So I would really boil it all down to people want information. They really look for these vacation rentals. We've seen an enormous uptick in that market, especially as compared to hotels as people are thinking through travel. But there is a comfort factor that people need because they're not going to, quote unquote, brands that they trust like the Marriotts or the Hiltons or the Starwoods. So they really want to make sure that they have all that information with them. So photos, descriptions, etc. If anything is lacking, you've really shot yourself in the foot.
So, David, I'm curious, as a follow-up, do you guys find that this data is different in Latin America versus the States or different in Europe? Do you guys find that it's different, or do you guys find that it's pretty similar worldwide?
I'd say that Europe definitely has a lot higher penetration in the vacation rental versus hotel market. I would say that you're seeing other markets catch up. In the short time span that we've had this data, obviously we're a fairly new startup. We have seen them starting to converge. And I think that's just, the awareness that's coming into this sector. But I am curious to see where that goes. And as I mentioned, I think Europe is really poised to pop, given that there's, great room for even further penetration in an already aware market. But I wouldn't be shocked if we saw similar trends starting to happen in the US, Latin America, and other parts of the world.
So, David, I would love to wrap up our call with action steps if we can. What are some final tips or strategies you might want to recommend for listeners?
Yeah, the number one things I would say is, depending on where you're coming from, if you're someone who has a great property that you're thinking about listing, really look into some of those economics we talked about where you can literally offset 3/4 of your mortgage by doing so, as HomeAway's customers are seeing $30,000 per year on average, depending on the size of the property. But I'd say number one, if that's something you're thinking about, explore it. It actually is a viable way to create some real value and income. If you're a traveler, I'd say explore vacation rentals. They're a really wonderful unique and different way to see a country. I obviously would recommend coming to Travefy, where you can not only find that great stock of vacation rentals that you can find in other places, but we bring it all together across sites and give you valuable tools to actually plan that with your friends. Because when you're doing a vacation rental, you're probably not just doing it with your wife or your husband. You're doing it with a larger group. So we give you the tools to actually do all the planning around that, collect the money, etc.
And then, David, what are the best ways to follow or connect with you and get involved with Travefy?
That's great. Well, there's so many different ways. Number one, just check us out at travefy.com, Travefy.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Travefy. Find us on Facebook where we're Travefy. Or honestly, feel free to send me an email at any point. I'm David at Travefy, and I always love to connect for feedback, ideas, comments, or anything. We're a growing company and thrive on the suggestions of you, the users. So never hesitate to reach out.
Love your energy, David. Thanks for coming on, and I hope we can do it again sometime soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
I want to thank David once again for coming on the show and breaking down the industry trends that he is seeing firsthand as the CEO and co-founder of the free web app Travefy. You can head on over to our site for complete show notes, easy ways to follow David, and more information about his fantastic business at Travefy. And don't forget, Travefy is a free web app that makes it simple and fun to plan trips with friends and groups. With Travefy, you can keep everyone on the same page, find amazing places to stay, and never get stuck with the bill. It's easy trip planning with less hassle. And as a free web app, your cost is, well, zero. Head on over to irelpodcast.com/Travefy for more details.
You have been listening to the IREL Podcast with Taylor White. Be sure to hit up IRELpodcast.com for more. That's IRELpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.